So today I'm going to be talking about the modern Dune movies, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, which are centered around the journey of Paul Atreides. In the world of Dune, planets are governed by great houses and dukes under the rule of an emperor, and interstellar travel is made possible by spice, which is a hallucinogenic. It's not the type of spice that we think of in our world, obviously. Spice is sacred to the Fremen, who are the native people of Arrakis. Arrakis is the planet where spice is predominantly harvested, and so they get into many conflicts with the spice harvesters, who are the Harkonnens, who are invading their lands. So the plot across the two movies is how Paul and his mother survive with the Fremen after their entire house are massacred, so including Paul's father. They are pretty much left stranded in the desert in a very hot and dry climate, and they have to rely on the Fremen to survive. The Fremen have this idea of a Lisan al Gaib, which means voice from the outer world, and they see signs in Paul as the voice from the outer world, so they give him this status of the voice from the outer world who is a messiah. Some of them believe in him, some of them don't. It's a whole thing, like, within Fremen politics of who gets to be the Lisan al Gaib. Some think that it should be a Fremen who is the Lisan al Gaib or the Messiah, while some think is someone else. Yeah, and his whole journey is trying to navigate this status and role that has been given to him by the Fremen, and how he's going to use that power. And we see in across the two movies that how he construes his power as either responsibility or opportunity makes him manifest that power in either pro-social, anti-social ways. So if he when he construes his power as a responsibility, he acts in pro-social ways. But when he construes his power as a opportunity, he acts in anti-social ways. And we will see this through 5 instances across the two movies. A 2019 study by Folk et al. Shows that factors that focus power holders on others and their relationships with them, whether they be personality traits, contextual factors, and construals of power, seem to consistently either weaken the negative effects of power or in some cases cause positive effects. Folk et al. Explain how when one construes their power as responsibility, they will be likely to care for others and engage in communal behaviors, but when one construes their power as an opportunity, they are more likely to engage in selfish and agentic behaviors that may ultimately manifest as negative or antisocial behaviors. So the contextual factors that influence Paul to cooperate pro-socially with the Fremen are the fact that he needs them to survive in the desert, as he is not accustomed to living and having to survive on his own in a hot and dry climate, and the fact that they have the shared goal of fighting against the Harkonnens because the Harkonnens murdered his entire house, including his father. But I argue that the most important factor in Paul's pro-social cooperation with the Fremen is the fact that in the beginning of the second movie, he views his power as responsibility instead of opportunity, and that causes him to interact pro-socially. This contrasts later in the movie when he starts to view his power as opportunity and then starts to act in antisocial ways. So in a conversation with his father, Leto Atreides, Paul says that he doesn't want to be the future of House Atreides. He's next in line to be Duke, so he's kind of rejecting his heritage. His father tells him a great man doesn't seek to lead, he's called to it, and he answers, I found my own way to it, maybe you'll find yours. In their memory, give it a try. When he says in their memory, he's referring to Paul's ancestors as they're standing in a graveyard, a family graveyard, and he's referring to the legacy that Paul has from his ancestors. While this doesn't relate to Paul's power with the Fremen, it does show that Paul views power in general as a responsibility and not an opportunity. He sees it as his duty as the heir to the Duke and the future Duke to perform his role, so he doesn't see any personal benefit to power and does not show a desire for it, but he's instead socialized to view his power as an obligation to serve his house, whether he wants it or not, because of his heritage. He's also influenced to view the construal of power as responsibility as a sign of good behavior, because his father tells him that a great man is someone who is called to lead and doesn't want to lead but has to out of responsibility. This changes once his father dies. Now Paul wants revenge on the emperor who aided and abetted the Harkonnen slaughter of his house and his father. The emperor is shown here. In a conversation with his mother, he says, "I must sway the non-believers. If they follow me, we can disrupt spice production. That's the only way I can get to the emperor." His mother replies that his father didn't believe in revenge, but Paul says that he does. In this conversation, Paul views his power within Fremen society as an opportunity to gain access to the emperor and access to the throne by marrying the emperor's daughter. He's mostly just focusing on his own goals, and we'll see that later in this movie that construal has drastic antisocial impacts. Since this is a conversation between him and his mother, he can be honest about his plans with the Fremen, since she is not Fremen and they have to rely on each other to survive in this harsh climate as foreigners in a world that they don't understand. After hearing an argument break out between the Fremen, however, he changes his mind and starts to view his power as a responsibility to the Fremen to live and fight with them, instead of viewing his power as an opportunity by trying to control them so that he can get closer to the Emperor. The argument that breaks out is between non-believers and believers of him as the Lisan al-Gaib, in which a non-believer says the Mahdi must be Fremen, Mahdi meaning savior. Arrakis must be freed by its own people. He then talks to Chani, a Fremen woman he is developing a relationship with, and she says, "You ought to control people, you tell them a Messiah will come, then they'll wait for centuries." Paul tells the Fremen, "I'm not the Mahdi, I'm not here to lead, I'm here to learn your ways, let me fight beside you, that's all I'm asking." This shows that Paul is capable of caring about other people that he has power over and his relationship with them, which manifests in pro-social behavior. In another scene, Paul says that he's willing to die for the Fremen cause, which displays selflessness, and when Stilgar, the person pictured here, a Fremen leader, asks him what he would do to fight the Harkonnens, Paul asks the question back to him, showing that he can take advice and will collaborate with others for the benefit of all, further demonstrating pro-social behavior. While this expression of pro-social behavior could be seen as a manipulation of the Fremen to get them to believe that he is acting in their best interests, it is not. He generally views his power as a responsibility to the Fremen at this point in the story. In a conversation with his mother, he says about the Lisan al-Gaib, "It's not a prophecy, it's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. They deserve to be led by one of their own." When his mother replies that the story gives the Fremen hope, he shouts, "That's not hope." Paul views his power as a responsibility to empower the Fremen, not as an opportunity to empower himself. He believes that the Mahdi should be Fremen and actively resists his role as the potential Lisan al-Gaib. Paul uses his position to fight the Harkonnens without trying to gain power or sway the non-believers, which is what he initially wanted to do. Even while his mother pressures him, he remains loyal to the Fremen and sees his power as responsibility instead of opportunity, even while situational factors continue to pressure him to do otherwise. But he eventually succumbs to these pressures. He has to go south, which his visions tell him will trigger a holy war in his name. On this journey, he drinks a poison that enables him to see the past and the future. He says, "Our enemies are all around us, and in so many futures they prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through. We're Harkonnens, so this is how we will survive, by being Harkonnens." Through the visions that the poison gave him, he finds out that his mother is the daughter of the leader of House Harkonnen, who was responsible for the murder of House Atreides and his father. And now he thinks that the only way for them to survive is to act like Harkonnens, who are tyrannical oppressors. Here, Paul has switched back to construing his power as opportunity. He accepts and uses his role as the potential Lisan al-Gaib, which he was adamantly resisting before, to sway the non-believers at a war council, and leads all the Fremen to war against the Emperor, even though he knows from his visions that this will cause mass starvation and death. He manipulates the Fremen who believe in him for his own purpose of revenge and ascendance to the throne, which is clearly selfish and agentic, leading to antisocial behavior in his refusal to listen to anyone else or follow anyone else's rules. He becomes a dictator when his construal of power shifts back from responsibility to opportunity. This is important because understanding why certain people in certain situations act in a pro-social or antisocial way in response to power is helpful in encouraging future leaders to act in more pro-social ways instead of antisocial ways, which eliminates or reduces the potential for tyranny.